Yeah, welcome here in Winterberg. I'm Rob, and I'm standing here with Gavin Vos. He is the owner and founder of SPANK Industries. And today I would like to talk with Gavin about Vibrocore, basically. So Vibrocore is around for quite a while. And how did you get into the idea in the first place?
Well, it was about 10 years ago when we were sponsoring Fabian Couscous from the United Ride team. And he suffered severely from arm pump. He's had 2 or 3 surgeries to relieve the pressure in his arms. And he came to me and said, he's got this problem and he's struggling to ride, and, can we come up with something that could alleviate the situation? And his first question was, would carbon bars do a better job at absorbing vibration? And we went about trying to establish, what creates arm pump, what causes it. And it's proven through the medical fraternity that low frequency range from about 5 to 50 hertz is what creates the pressure on the muscles. Basically, the fibers in your muscles don't have much stretch. Through this fatigue, they expand to about 20%, and then they've got nowhere to go. So it reduces your blood flow and basically creates numbness and pain in your muscles. So having that knowledge, we went about trying to establish, how can we change the effect of riding on the body. And the best way to do that was to identify and isolate that frequency range and then try to move the wavelength outside of that range to alleviate the situation. So we worked with a company called SGS, which is a big industry leader in testing and the application of testing. And we worked with their engineers on creating a test bed, and we tested a bunch of different bars, both carbon and alloy, and then established that actually the bars have got a unique frequency of their own, which brings that range more to 15 to 25 hertz, which is that's sort of the perfect storm and the worst frequency range to affect the arm pump, And then through a process of elimination, we established that foam was the best way to actually approach it. And we started working with a couple of foam suppliers, and then through the test process, got to a certain density, a certain hardness, a certain foam type, and then injected that into the bars, and then were able to move that wavelength into a higher frequency and reduce the effect of low frequency fatigue vibrating.
And how long was that process really to develop it from the first idea and until you really had probably you went through a few different type of foams and densities and everything?
Yeah.
So
probably about a 2.5-year process. The big challenge was the cost to rent the vibration test machine was quite extensive. So we had to do a lot of pre-testing and a lot of establishing of our criteria and benchmarking before we could actually go ahead and use the machine. So for those that are interested, there's actually a really deep white paper on our website that unpacks the whole process and what we did and where we went. And there's a couple of photographs and things that makes it a little bit more easy to understand.
So yeah, it's been quite a development process. So now you have it for many years in the bars.
Yeah.
And people out there are swearing on it, especially when they have wrist problems or also on long rides and over long term. People say, hey, we really feel a big difference. They can't ride anything else. So, but you mentioned also you did some testing with carbon bars as well. So how did that end up in that comparison?
Well, as I say, it's not only the material, it's also the geometry that plays quite an important role in the bar ability. All bars dampen frequency to some extent, but we found that different geometries, different materials had a vast impact on that as well. So as far as carbon goes, there were other concerns, environmental concerns, safety in the more aggressive downhill and free riding. So we found very little difference between the aluminium and the carbon when it comes to the low frequency vibration outside of geometry. So as I say, the geometry played a bigger role in it. What we do in our aluminium bars is we also do a butting process because we're manufacturing the products ourselves. We've got a lot of knowledge on material processing. We work hard in the bars. We do a butting and swaging process that hardens the material, strengthens the material, gives us the ability to put material where we need it. and basically we have a very slow gradual taper to the end of the bars, and that dissipates energy even further outside the end of the bars. So the handlebar without Vibrocore is significantly good, but with Vibrocore it obviously dampens and also strengthens the bar and increases the fatigue life.
Yeah, I have also my story from last year that, like I broke my wrist last year filming, and then it wasn't early in the season, so after 6 weeks I was able to ride again the whole year, but only with a wrist protector. And but I was only able to ride on the Vibrocore bar. Like I had on my other bike, I had a non-Vibrocore bar on it, and I was like not able to ride even an hour because it was so painful. And then I mounted Vibrocore bars on all of my bikes, and then it worked like fine. Like I had problems with my wrist the whole year, but it worked only with Vibrocore bars.
Well, we've had so many people come back to us, Rob, with similar issues, I mean, as we get older, we start having more effect of the bicycle. Just because you get a little bit smart, a little bit wise, you start realizing that there's a negative. Take Brian Feinstein from Whistler Bike Park is another great example. He's been riding for many, many years. He was struggling to do a lap on A-line, and now he's doing 7 or 8 laps since he's had Vibrocore, So, and we've got plenty of people that have written in and asked us about that, and that's what's led to further development with us now putting that into gravel. And us going to the gravel segment, because a lot of the consumers that are on Vibrocore on their mountain bikes have said, why aren't you doing this for gravel? It would be the perfect solution. So we've evolved along that route now as well, and then also into the wheels. So I mean, a rim is a profile. It has the ability to cave in on itself. When we inject the Vibrocore into it, it actually puts an expansive load on the sidewall, strengthens it, much like you can stand on a Coke tin with Coca-Cola in it. You take the Coke out and it compresses. So it's also a good analogy on sort of what the benefits of Vibrocore are. Besides the low frequency vibration dampening, it also strengthens the profile.
And lengthens the lifetime of the product at the end.
Exactly, and the rider to some degree too.
Yeah, Gavin, you introduced SPANK into the mountain bike market back in 2003, I think, right?
Yep.
So how did you get into developing components in the first place?
Well, firstly, it was Sven Mack and myself, Sven Mack from Sportnut, that launched SPANK in 2003. Over the years, things have changed. As Sven's distributions got bigger, I've got deeper involved with SPANK. The history to that, it's quite a long history, but the short version was I moved to Taiwan in 1997, actually just for a year after visiting many times, and ended up staying there to support a factory on a project, and ended up never leaving. And then I started Fun Components, and then moved on to Mizaki Zokes. I did their program, and then did a lot of work with Atom Lab and a couple of other brands. And then when Sven and I got together and looked at what we needed to do in components, where the market was, and that's when the dirt jump scene had just started, and we were one of the pioneers of the dirt jump scene, and that's kind of where SPANK got going, So it was like in the roots of dirt jump at the time.
So now, I mean, you manufacture all your products by yourself in your own factories, and I mean that's quite unusual in the industry. So why would you go like such a also risk path of really developing everything and manufacture everything? I guess it's also very expensive to have like your own factories and everything.
Yeah, well, it's evolved over years, but the reason why we got into the manufacturing was when we started off with wide rims. I don't know if you remember the Stiffy rim. I think you were on that in the beginning as well. I mean, you've been with us since we've been around, So when we launched the Stiffy rim, I mean, we went through all the manufacturers and couldn't find somebody that could deliver what we were looking for. And then after a while, it just been frustrating of not being able to find a solution from a manufacturing partner. At the same time, carbon started coming on really strong, and a lot of people sort of stepped the evolution of aluminium as carbon rushed into the market, and that's when I thought it was an opportunity for us to get deeper involved with aluminium production.
And magnesium as well. Like I remember
and magnesium
that
at the time.
Rims where everyone was like, you can't make a wide rim, like wide 30 millimeter, 35 millimeter.
Yeah, well, we were looking for an alternative to carbon fiber at the time. I mean, you understand my concerns with carbon fiber from the environmental impact and from a processing point of view, which too few people actually understand or know about. If you go online and you try and understand, how's carbon fiber made, there's very little information. There's actually only 6 manufacturers making the strands of carbon fiber. And they're burning materials at 1800 degrees C to 4300 degrees C in a 4 or 5 step process. So the amount of energy that goes into creating the strands, you could ride your bicycle to the moon and back, and you're not going to be environmentally, there's not going to be an environmental offset, you know. So that was another main factor why we went into manufacturing of alloys and looking at new development processes and new manufacturing techniques. And we started off with rims. And I bought 2 or 3 machines and started hooping some profiles, and then eventually that wasn't sufficient, got more equipment in, and 10 years later now we're manufacturing rims for a lot of the industry-leading brands in aluminium, and obviously we've developed and evolved the SPANK range of rims extensively to be able to give a benefit to the consumer. And you know, a lot of our philosophy is giving the best value for money possible. So last season we had an exceptional year. We won the DH World Cup, the UCI World Cup, on a $699 wheel set. We got first men's, third ladies, first juniors, EWS, winning ladies, a couple of podiums with the men's and the juniors.
In the EWS, you won almost every race. Right?
Yeah, and then with on the gravity side as well, with Ethan Null, we got a podium 2 or 3 years in a row. So we've had fantastic results in a very cost-effective wheel set, and that's because of all the energy that goes into making it right, making it different, and trying to bring a World Cup performance product at affordable price.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for giving us such an insight, and keep developing such rad products for us.
Great. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Good one.